Hello, everybody. Welcome to St. Patrick's Cathedral for our Q&A on Tuesday, as we do for such a long time. I know that most of you know that I wasn't here last week because I was attending the funeral of one of my classmates, Father James Flanagan, down at Immaculate Conception Church. The week before, I explained a little bit about the Mass that I wear very often, and I told you that it came from a friend of mine who's the mayor of a small city in West Virginia, and we always quote the song that West Virginia is almost heaven. So since St. Patrick's tries to be almost heaven too, so that's why I wear this very, very often. After that explanation, I got an envelope in the mail that came yesterday, and it came from one of our virtual parishioners named Lisa, and she sent this mask, and I just want you to see it, and I'll wear it at the end of the Mass. I hope you can see it. I hope Roberto is saying it. Now, let me explain this one. If you see what it says, "Have a great day, everybody," and then with my thumb up. And I realized that that is what I usually say at the end of every session that we have. Have a great day, everybody. So that's why somebody sent me this mask, which I'll wear often also. So I'm grateful to Lisa, a virtual parishioner, for this lovely little gift. Okay, here we go, our Q's and A's. This comes from a man somebody from Fredericksburg, Texas. We get a lot of inquiries from Texas and from California especially. We've noticed that when Mass is ended, after the priests have left the altar, they always bow to the left. Is there a crucifix there? So if you look over my shoulder, as we leave the altar and come a little bit behind the altar, there is a big crucifix there, and we all bow to the crucifix. It's a Catholic tradition at the end of the Mass that the celebrant and everybody with him would bow to the cross. So that's what we do. That's what we're doing at the end of each Mass, if you see us bowing like that. Please explain visiting priests. Do they call personally to ask if they could take part in a Mass on a particular Sunday, or are they invited? Are we to assume there are extra vestments there they can wear? Well, in the modern age when things are sometimes a little more complicated than they were in the past, whenever a priest comes to St. Patrick's, or really to any parish that's outside his own diocese, the priest is supposed to have a letter of good standing. So that's what we expect for visiting priests. Sometimes they'll call, just like the question is asking. Sometimes they'll call, sometimes they'll just show up. But if they have their letter, we're very happy to accommodate them, happy to welcome them in concelebrating here at the cathedral. And yes, we have plenty of extra vestments. We have enough vestments so that if we had 500 priests, we would be able to put everyone in vestments. So they're not very fancy, but we have plenty, and we're very happy to welcome visiting priests from wherever they are. Last Saturday, the 19th, the church was decorated with many beautiful red poinsettias and large wreaths with red bows. But today, all the plants and wreaths were gone. That was on the 20th, the question came. I don't know what happened that day. There might have been a glitch with the transmission of the Mass. Maybe it was a Mass from an earlier time before we put the decorations. But as you see, our decorations are beautiful. We have many, many poinsettias and wreaths that were donated in memory of a number of loved ones. So maybe that one day there was a glitch, but now we're back to seeing all of our decorations. Again, we always decorate a little bit earlier than most churches, mainly because we have so many visitors, which in normal years anyway, we have so many visitors, so we want them to get into the Christmas spirit by having our Christmas decorations up. We realize the Catholic tradition is to put up Christmas decorations on Christmas Eve day. Well, it is a great Catholic tradition to do that. As a matter of fact, when I was a boy, my parents would put me and my brothers to sleep on Christmas Eve, and the house would be just like it was all during the year. There was nothing special up. we'd go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, my father would wake us up, and we would come into the living room, and voila, there would be the Christmas tree and all of the presents under the tree. And Dad would give us all a little tiny bit of champagne, and that's how we would begin Christmas Day. We couldn't open the presents till the morning, but at least we saw on Christmas, overnight, Christmas Eve, the decorations were put up. When I was ordained a priest and I came into a Dominican parish, or the people from Santo Domingo, I realized that my parishioners would decorate from before Thanksgiving, and they would have their tree up. So we're a little more accommodating to early decorations of Christmas decorations. Thank you for doing the Q&A, which we appreciate very much. Well, I'm really happy to do it. It's, as you can see, I enjoy doing the Q&A. This is from a lady from Canada. Okay. It's a question about confirmation. The children had First Communion and confirmation on the same day. In some parishes, especially in the past, that happened. That happened to this lady. Do bishops still slap your face? If you remember, if you're as old as I am, you remember that the ceremony or the sacrament of confirmation, when it was given to children or even to adults, part of it was to do a light tapping of the face as a symbol of suffering that you as a confirmed Christian should be ready to endure for the sake of Christ and the sake of the church. When the reforms of the Vatican Council came and the sacraments were changed somewhat in the way they were performed, that little slap was eliminated, so they don't do that anymore. Okay. This is from North Carolina. Oops, here it goes. Forgot it's a very, very long one. Monsignor Ritchie, we want to thank you for enriching our Christian life each day. We listen to Mass. You help us pray daily. You are truly a beacon of hope, and that's what we try to do here at St. Patrick's, and I'm grateful that this family recognizes it. My question is about the song, The 12 Days of Christmas. Is the below commentary accurate? And so if you remember the song, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me. And so there is a Catholic interpretation of what each of those gifts on the first day, second day, third day, etc. And it's a interpretation that is used to, that might have been used many centuries ago, or some centuries ago, to teach the Catholic faith to people. And if you go through it, and it's way too long to use this morning, but there are ways of equating, for example, the first day of Christmas. The partridge in the pear tree represents Jesus, the Son of God, whose birthday we celebrate on the first day of Christmas. So these gifts on the days of Christmas can be interpreted as ways of explaining our Catholic faith, and it has been used by people over the years. I don't know if it originally was meant to be that, but it has been used that way in a very profitable way. Okay, that's from North Carolina. Is the rosary that we pray either at the tabernacle or in a group considered an indulgence act for plenary indulgence? Where may we find a reliable list of indulgence acts? Well, that's something I have to research. I'm not really sure where we can find a list of indulgence acts. If somebody knows, they can inform me. I'd be really happy to hear that. Is there any comprehensive daily prayer book? There are a lot of daily prayer books that are in the bookstores. In our bookstore also we have a few prayer books, but I don't specifically recommend anyone in particular. Certainly if you are able to pray the prayer of the church, the liturgical prayer, the daily prayer of the church, that would be a very wonderful thing to do. That one came from Spain. This is from New Jersey. I watched the Mass last week, offered for the Order of Malta. Following, I read about it, but it was a lot to digest. Well, I understand, I think, that they help their brothers. Why such ornate vestments and formalities? Well, the Order of Malta and the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre are two very specifically named organizations in the church, in the world, that are related to the church. The Order of Malta is a sovereign entity in itself. It has representatives to the United Nations and to many of the countries in the world. It's been around since for millennia. It was here for over 900 years now. The Holy Sepulchre is very similar. The Order of Malta is a lay religious order that is oriented toward serving the sick and the poor and defending the Catholic Church. And they've been doing that, as I said, for over 900 years. Part of the ritual is that there are specific clothing that they wear to signify their membership in the order. We Americans are much more simple, and sometimes people will say that doesn't look right, or it's surprisingly fancy. But it is part of the order itself, and part of the ritual of they are praying together as a group. So here at St. Patrick's, every year we have, except again for this year, we have the investiture of the new members of the Knights and Dames of the Holy Sepulchre and the Knights and Dames of the Order of Malta. So it's they're very important to us here in New York, and they do wonderful work for the poor and the sick throughout the world in Malta. And the Order of the Holy Sepulchre has a special connection with the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem and the Latin Patriarchate of the Holy Land, serving as a source of financial assistance to the Patriarchate and to the hospital that they run, and to Catholic schools in Palestine and in Israel, and they've been doing that for many, many years too. I always watch your Q&A and find them very informing and very helpful, especially during these times. So a big thank you. This is from someone in Maryland. I have two questions. The first one, if you were married in a Catholic church in a foreign country, is that marriage recognized in the U.S.? Of course it is. Wherever you are married, you are married. If you're married in church, not only are you married according to wherever the country is that recognizes marriages, but also the universal church would recognize your marriage. So that's the answer. If you're married in a foreign country, sure, it's recognized here. Second, growing up, I went to CCD for my preparation for First Penance and First Communion. Now it is not called that anymore. I'd like to know why, and then also what is the difference between CCD and religious education. CCD stands for the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine, and it was like an overarching description of the instructions that a school or a parish would give to the children who are preparing for the different sacraments. So for the sacrament of baptism, sometimes if a child is receiving that later in life, or for First Penance, First Communion, Confirmation. So they would be part of what's called the CCD, which in modern times or in recent years has been rebaptized into religious education. Are they the same? Not quite the same, but they are speaking of the same reality, the instruction in the faith in different parishes of the children that are growing up there. I also watch Mass every day and just want to say how uplifting and humbling the Masses are. So we're very, very happy to answer the questions of this man from Maryland. My home parish is also called St. Patrick's, so pretty cool name, so I agree with that very much. Okay. Thank you for providing daily Mass. I have some older pictures in the sanctuary of the cathedral, as some of them look like they show an altar in the center of what is now the open area in front of the cardinal's chair. Was there another altar there at one time? Yes. It was right there where my finger is pointing. Now, when the cathedral was built, it was opened in 1879. Mass was always in Latin, and Mass was always celebrated with the celebrant facing, not facing the people, but his back was to the people. When the Vatican Council established a new approach to the celebration of the liturgy, one of the areas that was very common was for the priest to be facing the people and offering the Mass in at that way. So St. Patrick's Cathedral, if you look at the altar that we have now, that altar was put here in 1942. It replaced another one that had been here since 1879 when we opened the cathedral. So that altar was put here in 1942, and it was a freestanding altar, which means that it wasn't against the wall. It was standing free, and you see the structure on top of the altar is called a baldacchino. And so the priest, again, in 1942, the Mass was the same as it had been before. The Tridentine Mass said in Latin. We didn't necessarily call it the Tridentine Mass. We just called it the Mass because that's what we were used to for hundreds of years. And so the priest would not face the people, but would face the opposite way and would celebrate the Mass. When the Vatican Council changes began, here at St. Patrick's, we were not unique, but very few churches were as easily able to adapt to the new liturgy. So all the priest had to do was go around the altar and now face the people. So we didn't have to make any alterations in it. So that's from 1960s was when we began to have Mass facing the people. And somewhere in the 1980s, when Cardinal O'Connor was the Archbishop of New York, he was not very happy with being so far away from the people. If you look at the distance, it's a fairly large distance. Although that's exactly the distance that had been there from 1879 to for 100 years into the 1980s. So he had one of the altars that was throughout the cathedral. We have about 14 places that have specific altars. So we had one of them, which was at the Shrine of the Holy Family, removed from there and put right where that person identified it in the middle of the sanctuary here. And that way, he and the other priests who would say Mass here were much closer to the people. And for the 80s, for about 25 years, even longer than that, that's the way we celebrated Mass. And pictures from any of those times would show the altar there, and also the high altar that was used either never or very rarely. One of the changes that Cardinal Dolan asked me to make at a certain point a number of years ago was to remove that altar that had not been there originally, that was moved there, and put it back into one of the shrines, so that we could have the sanctuary the way it was originally set up. And technically, you should not have two altars in the same sanctuary. It doesn't make liturgical sense. So we moved the old altar and put it somewhere else, and now we always have Mass from the high altar on every time we celebrate Mass. Okay. Also, the TV seems also to show an altar behind the one now in use. Okay, so he was talking about the two altars that we had at one time. That first one is gone. The one that we use now is where it is. But behind the altar is the Lady Chapel. And sometimes some of the shots on TV could make you think that the Lady Chapel was immediately behind the main altar. It's not. There's a big distance, and there's a glass wall that separates the Lady Chapel from the rest of the cathedral. So there's only one altar, although sometimes you might be fooled in thinking that there are two. Okay. And is there another entrance and altar on the Madison Avenue side of the cathedral? So on the Madison Avenue is where the Lady Chapel is. There is an altar in there, and we do say Mass there sometimes. We have weddings there sometimes, baptisms there sometimes. It's a very active place, and it's where the Blessed Sacrament is reserved, so people come and pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament every day at every hour of the day. Okay. This came, another one from Texas, that question was. I realize it's a busy week at the Cathedral, and you may not hold the usual Tuesday morning Q&A. Well, here we are, so we are. My question has to do with how the musical choices are coordinated with the liturgy of the daily Mass. Is that done jointly with the musical director and the clergy? Our musical director is Dr. Jennifer Pasquale. She's a doctor of music, and each year she spends a good amount of time what's the right word? I'm trying to think of the right word. Figuring out what music would be the right music for each of the celebrations that we have for the entire year. So for the celebration of different saints, celebration of different feast days, celebration of different liturgical seasons, she, out of her vast knowledge and expertise, is able to give a whole year's worth of music, and we discuss it and we approve it, and it is something that is done on a yearly basis. Now, from year to year, we do a lot of the same things because we celebrate the same feasts and the same liturgical seasons. So it's something that, because of her very long, extensive liturgical knowledge and musical ability, that Dr. Pasquale is able to do for us and with us. The Christmas concert was magnificent, as was the organ recited by Dr. Pasquale. Many thanks and kudos to everyone who made these events possible online. I can't urge you more to go into the archives and watch the Christmas concert. It's something that we look forward to every year. This year we were terribly disappointed that we couldn't have it, but with the miracle of computers and taping, we were able to provide a virtual Christmas concert, and it was magnificent. Everybody that's seen it has said wonderful things to me about it, and certainly Dr. Pasquale is the source and the inspiration for it, and we're very grateful. At least 25,000 people have seen it, and if you haven't seen it yet, try to see it. Go stpatrickscathedral.org/live and look for the archives, looking for the concert from last Thursday. This is from somebody who's sent it hotmail. The Secretary to Cardinal Dolan, Father Stephen Reese, is he appointed, or is there an application selection? Well, one of the things that happens here in New York, at least in the Catholic Church, is that the various positions, whether being pastor or secretary or rector or whatever specific jobs that we have to do to make the archdiocese work well, are not applied for. The cardinal, and with his advisors, of course, chooses the people to fill the different slots that are important for the smooth running of the cathedral, of the archdiocese. The cathedral is certainly one part of it. Sometimes people don't realize that the cathedral is a parish, only one of almost 300 parishes throughout the archdiocese, and the rector, is myself, runs the cathedral for the cardinal, who is the official pastor of the parish. But there is no application. It's the cardinal and his advisor chooses people to fill the slots that are important in running the diocese, one of which is the secretary to the cardinal. So Father Stephen Reese was chosen by the cardinal a couple of years ago, and he has a term probably of about 5 years with the cardinal. But again, it's not something that you apply for. Is the priest reading the gospel on Sundays a deacon? He seems to wear a different vestment with sleeves. Well, that's right. That's a good observation. Ordinarily, at a solemn mass, you would have the celebrant, and then you would very often have a deacon. And so on Sundays, we almost always, every now and then, something happens and we don't have a deacon. So if we do have a deacon, part of his job is to proclaim the gospel. So when you see a person reading the gospel and his vestments are a little bit different, realize that that's a deacon. Here, it's usually a permanent deacon, someone who has been trained as a deacon, who may be married, who may have a family. We also have transient deacons who are men preparing for the priesthood and who will be a deacon for a period of time before they're ordained to be priests. And the role of both types of deacons is to read the gospel. And the last one of the lectors wears a pin on her left chest. Boy, people are very observant. Is it connected to her involvement? Yes, it's a symbol of the organization that she's a part of, this lady. So those are the answers today, and those are the questions. I'm very happy to do it. As you can see, I always have a smile on my face when I'm in the midst of doing it, and certainly at the end. So let me do what I always do. May Almighty God bless you who are here and who are our virtual parishioners. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And as I always say, have a great day, everybody.